about what people are wearing. As an example, recently in the UK, there was a case which sought to analyze the idea of people wearing hooded tops. And you see, especially in Detroit, there are many people who come, they wear hooded tops and they walk in a particular fashion with that hooded top. Sometimes the hooded top is there as a sporting piece of clothing, but on other times there is a certain group of people who wear the hooded top. What happened was, in the British legal system, they took to court this idea that there are people who wear hooded tops, we should ban them from entering malls. Imagine that. A full ban was placed on the UK that no one was allowed to wear a hooded top in a mall. Because the idea was that the hooded top represented certain groups of people who, instead of looking up when they're walking, are more concerned at looking down and barging everyone who gets in their way. So what happened was that the legal system actually put a ban on it. Here one notices the highlighting of the clothes that we wear. That a hat, or indeed a hooded top, or indeed a jacket, or indeed a pair of jeans. A person can come with baggy jeans. It may express the idea that this person doesn't really care about himself. He wants to give himself a more relaxed look. Whereas the person may come with a pair of jeans which are extremely tailored, where he is trying to show you, this is my finer part and I'd like to show it very clearly to you. Here you see many people showing how the idea of clothes actually expresses what your certain opinions are. And that's why we find that the industry today seeks to analyze religions in terms of what they wear. Many people, when you walk in the street and you see a nun, for example, do you notice how, whether you are religious or not, as soon as you see a nun in the street, for some reason you put your head down automatically. And it's the case of like, you know, I don't want to look at her, I should never look at her, and I put my head down, I just continue to walk. Because a nun evokes a certain amount of self-respect, where you find that the way she is dressed is not the tightest of dressing. The way she is dressed is not exposing certain parts of her body. On the contrary, she is showing much more loose garments, with the idea that when you look at me, I want you to understand exactly what I am. Don't look at me for my tightness of skin, rather look at me for the person that I am and the Lord that I worship. So sometimes when we look at someone, straight away it evokes a sense of reaction within us that their clothes speak louder than any of their actions could ever come. And that's why when one analyzes the concept of hijab in Islam, one finds the importance of identity in the world of hijab. One notices that hijab provides mankind with an identity which is analyzed in the West more than it is analyzed anywhere. You notice today so many discrimination cases in the legal world which have looked at the area of hijab. Everywhere you go there is a discrimination case. As an example, in the UK, a girl named Shamina Begum took her school to court because the school would not allow her to wear the full hijab. And when I mean the full hijab, not just jumper and trousers, the full hijab being the covering that comes on top of the jumper and trousers. She was not allowed according to school rules, and what she did, she took the whole school to court. Do you know who represented her? The wife of Tony Blair, Prime Minister. Tony Blair represented a girl wearing hijab in the British legal system. Sherry Booth, who was the wife of Tony Blair, she was the QC on behalf of this girl, saying that it's the right of a female to dress appropriately and that we should not intervene in their rights. And that's why you found this whole idea which came forward on the rights of the female, and that now any legal case takes this as a precedent. Even in the UK, I think some of you would have heard of the university Imperial College. You may have heard of it. Imperial is known as being the best school for science and technology in the world. There was a girl who wanted to wear the niqab. You know the niqab which covers everything except the eyes. She wanted to wear the niqab. Imperial nearly put a law which was seeking to stop this, because what Imperial's belief was that yes, you can wear a scarf, but you can't wear the niqab, for the reason that we cannot really identify if you might have, you know, cheating notes underneath your niqab. Because you can imagine someone just having how is anyone going to have a stare underneath their niqab to see if there's any notes? It becomes quite obvious, you know. And sometimes when one looks at this whole concept, one finds how the hijab is being concentrated on. Again, Imperials decided that they were not going to put a law. Imagine that, brothers and sisters. Because of the movement of some females, Imperial straight away said, okay, we will not put this law, it is still under further discussion, because a group of people spoke out. And when you look at other legal cases, even in the US, I myself have researched 4 legal cases where a person who was wearing hijab took the company to court. As an example, you have, you know, Dunkin' Donuts? Yes, I mean, clearly you all know it. Dunkin' Donuts, you find that in Dunkin' Donuts there was a girl who was working at the till in Dunkin' Donuts, and what happened was that she had converted to Islam. She had converted to Islam, she wanted to wear the hijab. The people at Dunkin' Donuts would not allow her to wear the hijab. But then she got a group of people who represented her. They took the case to court, and you found that she won the case and was allowed to wear hijab in Dunkin' Donuts. And now you see in Dunkin' Donuts there is a law which allows the female to wear hijab. Even in US Airways there was such a case. Even you find the Sheraton Hotel did not allow one of the workers to wear hijab, and they were taken to court, and again there was a victory. Even in Taco Bell, you all know Taco Bell, there was another girl who worked there, she was wearing the hijab, she was sacked. And straight away there was uproar. She won the case against the company, highlighting how hijab is looked at from every angle. And many of you would have heard of Yvonne Ridley. Yvonne Ridley was the lady, the journalist who was captured by the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. I'm sure many of you have come across her name. Yvonne Ridley, she talks about how she was in Edgware Road in London. And those of you who know London will know that Edgware Road is like Arab land. It's like how you have here in Dearborn. You have a whole road where it's just full of Arabs. She says, I was wearing a white hijab, and I also wore a black hijab. When I wore my black hijab in Edgware Road, every time I asked for a taxi, no taxi would stop for me. Once, twice, 3 times. The black cabs that you have in London would never stop. She said, as soon as I wore a white hijab, automatically, because the white suited my white pale face as well, straight away a taxi stopped for me. And she says, in the conversation that I had with this taxi driver, he said, at least you're not like one of those who I'm scared if she sat in my car, she would bomb my car. Imagine the impression that is there on the concept of hijab. And of course one notices and needs to examine why there is such a prejudice around this whole concept. Why is it that someone looks at a piece of cloth and looks at it in a way where France is willing to ban the whole of hijab? When one looks at the case in France, France has a history that needs to be understood from 1789 until 2004. You can't just come with an opinion about France on the basis that a couple of Muslim sisters have been oppressed. You need to understand that from 1789, when the French Revolution happened, there was always an aim to make a secular system. This was made even stronger in 1905, when they had come forward and they separated the church and the state. In 1937 in France, what happened was they stopped any fascist propaganda. And then in 1989, there was a landmark case in France, where 3 Moroccan girls, as you know, in 1957, there was an influx of North Africans into France. In 1989, there was a group of girls in a French grammar school who wore the hijab. For the first time, the French government decided to clamp down because they recognized too many were wearing the hijab, number one. Number two, not only were wearing the hijab, but were acting like how you should act with a hijab. It brings fear when a person acts how you should act with a hijab. And therefore you see France from that day until today always looked at the hijab in a completely different way. And why do we even look at those countries? Someone may come and say Europe is anti-hijab. Someone may come and say America is anti-hijab. I don't need to look anywhere further than Tunisia, Turkey, and Kuwait. Tunisia, Turkey, and Kuwait. Look at the history of legal cases in each of these 3. In Tunisia, in 1989, no military or government worker was allowed to wear hijab. Anyone who was wearing hijab in Tunisian government positions was sacked from their position straight away. Why go further than that? Turkey in 1988. If a wife of a military officer was wearing hijab in Turkey in 1988, she straight away got the sack. Imagine that. 1988 Turkey, you are a wife of a military officer. Imagine, the military officer got nothing to do with you. You're just his wife, he gets the sack straight away. And further than this, Kuwait, meant to be the land of Islam and the land of religion, we find in 1992 in Kuwait, there is the Dean of Medicine at Kuwait University. The Dean of Medicine puts a ban on a girl who was wearing full hijab because he said it's not acceptable for her to be in my class within the school system. That's why we see the defense of hijab is of the utmost importance today. Why? Because you see many parents, when they explain hijab to their children, it's as if they're forcing hijab on their children. When you come to explain hijab to your daughter, or even to your son and his hijab, there are certain points that need to be made. Number one, you don't throw the hijab on her at the age of 9. You throw the hijab on her at the age of 9, you will find straight away she hasn't understood. what the hijab should be from the age of 6 or 7, you should be introducing the hijab.